What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. We have a big week 3 of college football ahead of us. We got games that are going to have early playoff implications. We got a game that could decide the fate of somebody's job. We got a game featuring 2 top 25 Florida schools being played on a network that you might not even know about. We have games, people, that are going to reshape the hierarchy of the 2 major Power 4 conferences in this sport. I'm here to preview and give you guys my predictions for the 5 biggest games in week 3. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications if you live, eat, breathe, and sleep football. We're talking college football along with the NFL 24/7. 365 days throughout the year. If you are a diehard football fan, JT Sports is the place to be. If you enjoy the content and you want to support us, all we ask is that you give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. It only takes literally 20 seconds to do. It would mean so much if you do this to us. Just let us know your thoughts about the show, some improvements that we can make, some things that you like, some questions. Just give us some feedback about the show. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know you enjoy this podcast by giving us a 5-star review, man. Apple and Spotify, the links are in the description and pinned comment section below. And let's dive into it. Clemson has a dangerous game on the road against Georgia Tech this week. They are a 3.5-point favorite going into this game, and they've entered this season sputtering out the gate. They didn't look that good offensively against LSU. They came out flat last week against Troy. You're going up against a Georgia Tech team that was a heavy pick to be the sleeper team to possibly make it out of the ACC and represent this conference in the playoffs. They are an experienced team led by Haynes King, one of the best quarterbacks in college football, great runner, very tough and gritty quarterback. Haynes King is the perfect embodiment of what Georgia Tech football is under Brent King. And this is a program-defining game for Georgia Tech against Clemson this week, because this game is going to tell us the trajectory of Georgia Tech football. Is this program ready to compete for the ACC? Are they ready to make it to the playoffs? Or are they still a year or two behind, depending on how this game against Clemson goes? Because with how well Georgia Tech has developed, how they've gone about making their assessments with their acquisitions in the transfer portal, the guys that they've retained, developed from the high school ranks, they have a great coaching staff. Georgia Tech is a sleeping giant. With the right head coach and the right infrastructure, they could be what Arizona State is right now. They could be what Clemson once was and eventually establish themselves. They have the facilities to be a premier program in college football, but can they get to that level under Brent Key? This game is kind of going to be a little bit of a litmus test for that. With Clemson defensively having 2 potential top 10 picks on the defensive line, TJ Parker, Peter Woods, they have to be able to take over this game for Clemson. If Clemson's going to avoid getting upset on the road against Georgia Tech, they need for TJ Parker and Peter Woods to be disruptors. They have to create a lot of havoc plays, a lot of sacks, a lot of tackles for loss. If they allow Georgia Tech to run the football on them the way Georgia Tech has their first 2 weeks, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. I don't believe that Clemson has the kind of team that's built to win these low-scoring, time of possession-driven games. That's what it is when you're playing against this Georgia Tech squad. If you can't win the time of possession battle, if you can't maximize every possession that you get the ball on offense, you're going to get in trouble against Georgia Tech. With how sloppy Cade Klubnik and Clemson's offense has looked early to start this season, are they going to get right against Georgia Tech? Defensively, we can trust that Clemson can get stops in this game. Georgia Tech isn't the kind of team that's going to light up the scoreboard on you. But if you allow them to run the football, you will lose. That's not the kind of game that Clemson wants to get in. Clemson's offense, that offensive line, has to play a lot better than what it has the first couple of weeks. The offensive line was supposed to be an actual strength of this team. Cade Klubnik was the best quarterback in college football. At least I thought he was entering this season. Hasn't really played that well. They need a lot to go right to avoid getting upset in this game because Georgia Tech is a really good team, and this is their shot to prove it. However, I'm going to take Clemson to beat Georgia Tech 24-20 is my final score prediction. I see TJ Parker and Peter Woods, along with Will Help, taking over this game for Clemson, slowing down that Georgia Tech rushing attack, and eventually Clemson's offense will find a way to get going. They'll find a way to get a little bit of a spark. Cade Klubnik, he's capable. Yeah, he may have been a little bit rough these first couple of weeks throwing the football, but he's a very good runner. Clemson can run the football. They have the ability to run the football. They just haven't shown that they can, but they will in this game against Georgia Tech. Their offensive line should be able to push around Georgia Tech's defensive line. This is a capable offensive line. I'm not willing to bet on Clemson's offensive line this early. Clemson does have a lot of experience on this offensive line unit. And I believe that Clemson's talent on the O-line, D-line wins this game for them. I know I've been saying this for the last few weeks about Clemson, but eventually their talent on the trenches has to prevail, and I believe it will against Georgia Tech. So give me Clemson to win this game. Georgia's a 3.5-point favorite walking into Rocky Top against Tennessee. It's been 8 years since Tennessee last got a win over Georgia, which was Kirby Smart's first season as Georgia's head coach. Can Tennessee prove that they finally are an elite program in the SEC? There are 3 tiers in the SEC. You have your tier 1 schools, which are teams that you're going to give the benefit of a doubt are going to be in the playoff conversation. Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. No matter how much talent these 3 schools lose, you're going to believe that they're going to be able to reload and avoid a rebuild season. The tier 2 programs are Ole Miss, LSU, and Tennessee. You don't know if they're going to be capable of maintaining the level of success that they've had in years past consistently due to them not proving to recruit and develop at the level that the tier 1 teams do. That's where Tennessee lies. Then your tier 3s are your Floridas, your South Carolinas, your Texas A&Ms. The talent's there, but you have concerns about the coaching and other things from an infrastructure standpoint. Maybe they don't have the same facilities as the other teams in the 2 tiers above them. For Tennessee, for you to enter that tier 1, you have to show that you don't have to rebuild. You don't have to go through 7-8 win seasons after just making it to the playoffs, winning 10 games during that stretch as well. You have to be able to show that you reload. You have elite player development. You have elite recruiting. This game against Georgia is going to show us just if Tennessee has moved into that tier 1 of elite SEC programs that are going to be consistent playoff contenders every single year. Worst case scenario, 9 wins. Best case scenario, 11 wins every season. Does Tennessee prove that against Georgia this year? Because Georgia has beaten Tennessee under Kirby Smart by an average of 25 points per game. So that shows that not only has there been a big talent discrepancy in this game, but also a huge coaching disadvantage that Tennessee has been at. With Kirby Smart, it's hard to doubt Georgia winning this game. You may have concerns about Gunnar Stockton. You may have concerns about Georgia's wide receivers. How good is that pass rush going to look? But one thing that you can be confident in is Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart has had Josh Heupel's number for some reason. Despite the offensive mastermind that Josh Heupel is, he can never score against Georgia's defense. What has changed philosophically about Tennessee for them to finally be able to put some points up on Georgia? Maybe this isn't a game that comes down to how many points Tennessee can score. Maybe it comes down to, can Tennessee win this game? When you think about Josh Heupel, when you think about Tennessee, you probably think offense, score a lot of points, shootouts, air raid, throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. But Tennessee actually is a team that has won games, running the football, relying on great defense. Does that beat Georgia? I think it can. I actually think the team that Tennessee has this year is better suited to beat Georgia than the previous iterations of Tennessee squads. This is a Tennessee team that has several 215-pound running backs. They have one running back that was going off against Syracuse that had no drip and no glove. When you got running backs with no gloves and no drip, they're all business. No nonsense, old school, smash mouth, I'm going to run you flat over. Those are the kind of athletes that Tennessee has now. They're not this gimmicky finesse team anymore where you think they can only beat you on the perimeter. No, Tennessee can actually win ugly games. And to beat Georgia, Tennessee has to make this an ugly game. You have to take away Georgia's ability to run the football with Gunnar Stockton. Tennessee has to make Gunnar Stockton show us that he can win games throwing the football. Make Georgia one-dimensional. Make Georgia prove that Gunnar Stockton was an upgrade over Carson Beck. Can Gunnar Stockton take over a game for Georgia? Can Gunnar Stockton elevate Georgia if the ground game isn't there? When Georgia has beaten Tennessee in the past, they have done it with Carson Beck and the mailman Stetson Bennett. Guys who weren't necessarily elite quarterback talents, but they had elite production because they were consistent. If Tennessee can take away the ground game and they force Georgia to have to rely on the passing attack to win this game favors Tennessee. The strength of their defense is their pass rush. They have a secondary that's thin, but they do have a few players there. They have great linebackers. The talent on defense is there for Tennessee. They've never been better on defense than what they are this year against Georgia. Does defense win this football game for Tennessee? I believe that it can, but does Tennessee have enough in the tank offensively to get it done against Georgia? Because this offense has never looked good against Kirby Smart's defense. He always gets his way against Tennessee offensively. I don't know. Maybe it has to be a schematic thing. With the kind of offense that Josh Heupel runs, Kirby Smart might just have the secret recipe to stopping it. Or maybe it's a personnel thing. Tennessee does recruit well, but maybe the wide receivers that they're bringing in aren't good enough to have success against Georgia's secondary. Something about Tennessee's offense they've been lacking in the 8 years that they've lost to Georgia. Have they corrected that issue this year? Home field advantage doesn't win this game for Tennessee. Playing in Rocky Top doesn't automatically give Tennessee the win over Georgia. They've lost to Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett in the past, and their first starts in Knoxville. So the road atmosphere doesn't win this game for Tennessee. What wins this game for Tennessee is, can they beat up Georgia up front? Can they do to Georgia what Ole Miss did to this team last year, which is win on first and second down, get them in the third and long situations, force them to throw the football, force them to be an unbalanced football team that has to win games throwing the football to do so. Force Gunnar Stockton to prove to us that he can throw the football with a high level of success. If Tennessee can do that, they beat Georgia. I'm going with Georgia to get the win, though. I'm going with Georgia to beat Tennessee. 31-20 is my final score prediction. I like Tennessee, but I don't know if they have the horses, nor do I trust them to be able to beat Kirby Smart, because they haven't been able to do it for 8 straight years in a row. And for the last 8 straight years, we've been saying that Tennessee finally has what it takes to beat Georgia, and they haven't been able to get it done. 3 years ago, I lost $300 taking Tennessee when they had Hendon Hooker at quarterback, and they got splattered against Georgia in that game. It was over by halftime. In the second half, Georgia was just trying to run out the clock because it was raining. They didn't want anybody noteworthy to get hurt. So when there have been years when Tennessee actually had really good teams, they still weren't able to get it done against Georgia. I don't trust them to get it done against Georgia this year, even if they are playing a rocky top. The Bulldogs are about to come and knock the top off. There's a lot of outrage over USF versus Miami being played on the CW, a game that features 2 top 25 teams out of the state of Florida. Is being played on a network that most of us don't even know about. If you grew up watching the Saturday morning cartoons, Dragon Ball Z, Yu-Gi-Oh! On the CW, then you probably are familiar with this network. It's been a long time since I've tapped into the CW. I didn't even know that the CW was broadcasting sports events now. So they no longer showcase the Saturday morning cartoons, and now they are focusing on broadening their horizons as the network. And that involves showing ACC football games. And they pick these games before the season. Now, they're hoping that these end up being good games, but most of the times they're picking from a bunch of throwaway games. USF versus Miami was a throwaway game that ESPN, the ACC network, didn't think was worthy being shown on their airwaves. So they said, hey, CW, you got an opportunity to pick this game if you want to. Well, all of a sudden, it becomes one of the biggest games of this week due to USF having their first 2 wins against top 25 opponents. Boise State, okay, not surprising. Florida on the road in a swamp and Gainesville? No one saw that coming. Be honest about it. USF outplayed Florida, and they outcoached them. And they are an 18.5-point underdog against Miami. USF, even if they lose to Miami, as long as they win out and win their conference championship, they're going to be in the playoffs. USF is the kind of G5 team that deserves to actually be in the playoffs because they have played a schedule that is on par to a Power 4 team schedule. They have beaten Power 4 opponents, very good ones at that. Florida and Boise State, who was just in the playoffs last year. Those are great resume builders. So even if they do get blown out by Miami, USF has more than already proven that they're going to be the G5 representative in the college football playoffs this year. They have a great quarterback and Brian Brown, led by a very phenomenal head coach that is rising very quickly throughout the head coaching ranks, and Alex Golish. And depending on how this game goes, win or lose, if USF keeps this thing close, this is going to be a formidable team in the college football playoffs. They got a good defense. They got an athletic front seven. But what gives Miami the advantage over USF, and why Miami won't have the same issues beating this team that Florida did, is that up front, they're just way more dominant. They're going to be able to run the football and just take so much time off the clock. USF with Brian Brown, they'll have too much pressure on their plate with what they're going to have to do every offense possession. Florida was averaging over 5 yards per carry on this USF defense. Miami can pretty much do the same thing. And unless USF's front seven is going to be able to shut down Miami's rushing attack, then I don't see how USF can hang around in this game. The defensive line of Miami also, they're going to be able to keep Brian Brown in the pocket. Once you allow Brian Brown to get outside the pocket, or he breaks contain, he makes a guy miss, that's when he does a lot of damage. That's when he's had some of his best plays. Miami, with the athleticism that they have on their defensive line, they can contain Brian Brown. They can keep him in the pocket. And even if they want him to be a pocket passer, he can definitely do that. But with the secondary that Miami has and this pass rush that they also possess, this isn't a game that Brian Brown is going to be able to win from within the pocket. He has to use his legs. His legs are essentially an extension of USF's offense. He's their leading passer and their leading rusher. He is this offense. And when you slow him down, you take USF out of the game. The magic number for USF is 27. If they can somehow find a way to get the 27 points, they can beat Miami. But unless Miami's defense just completely has a bunch of coverage bust and a bunch of catastrophic injuries, they're going to shut down USF's offense. Their quarterback, as good as he is, I don't think that the talent around them is going to be good enough to help prevail USF against Miami, a better coached team. Florida, they could have won that game, but they had a bunch of questionable decision-making, poor quarterback play. They just didn't look as good as what they were supposed to look in that game. We've already seen Miami take down Notre Dame. I don't think we get a Mario Cristobal special against USF. There are games that Mario Cristobal tends to have when Miami plays down the competition. I don't see this USF game being one of those Mario Cristobal specials, though. Unless Brian Brown goes complete Lamar Jackson and Miami can't tackle him, and Mario Cristobal has some questionable coaching decisions, if this does end up being a close game that costs Miami, that's the only way USF can upset Miami. Brian Brown has to have a Heisman moment. So give me Miami 42, USF 14. That's my score prediction for this game. Notre Dame has an early playoff elimination game this week against Texas A&M. If they lose this game, they will not get into the CFP as a 2-loss team. They just won't have any more quality opponents on their schedule to boost up their resume. You have to win this game against Texas A&M to keep your hopes of making it to the playoffs alive if you're Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. Texas A&M has one of the best teams in college football in terms of roster composition, 5 4-star blue chip talent. Texas A&M is top 5 in America in that department. They got one of the most experienced offensive lines in college football. They got a solid athletic dual threat quarterback in Marcel Reed. They improved their wide receiver position. And defensively, Mike Elko prioritized improving that secondary, which hurt that team in the second half late during the final stretch of 2024. Notre Dame against Miami, they seem to look a little bit uncomfortable early with CJ Carr running the football. He doesn't seem to be the quarterback that Riley Leonard was, but Notre Dame still intends on using him in that way, which is early during the season. They're still trying to figure him out, which is okay, but can CJ Carr have the kind of sloppy game against Miami, against Texas A&M, and Notre Dame still win? I doubt that. Notre Dame, they have to feature Jeremiah Love to beat Texas A&M, which Texas A&M is going to have a very formidable run defense. So can CJ Carr make enough plays for Notre Dame to beat Texas A&M, along with Marcel Reed? I have concerns about Marcel Reed's ability to throw the football with consistency. You're going up against one of the better secondaries in the nation. Marcel Reed is going to get tested. Marcel Reed, CJ Carr, whichever of these two quarterbacks makes the most plays late in this game is going to be the one that walks out with their team being victorious. I expect for this Texas A&M Notre Dame game to be a scrapyard brawl. I'm shocked that the line for this game is Notre Dame by pretty much a touchdown, because both of these two teams have the same playing style. They want to run the football, hard-nosed defense. Throwing the ball isn't really their specialty. Now, they hope to be improved in those regards. Notre Dame has a lot of talent at receiver. Texas A&M brought in Kevin Concepcion from the transfer portal, one of the better receivers out of this past portal cycle. So they expect to be able to throw the football if this is a game that comes down to it. But these are run-first teams. These are teams that are more so run-first defensive-oriented, and they're not going to light up the scoreboard. So I can see this being a game where the winner is probably the team that gets the 21st, or maybe this is a game that's won 17-13 or 13-10, because that's how this game kind of was last year until Notre Dame was able to get those big plays late down the stretch. But Texas A&M had bad quarterback play in that game. With better quarterback play with Marcel Reed now, that could be what closes the gap. That could be what gives Texas A&M this win. Or maybe playing College Station is what kind of helped Texas A&M in that game last week. But with Notre Dame being able to prevail, with you giving Notre Dame the home field advantage this year, then maybe that boosters Notre Dame's chances of being able to win. But with two teams that have limited offenses that are run heavy, this is a game that defense and field position are going to be crucial. Who's going to be better in the red zone? Who's going to be able to capitalize off those red zone trips? If Texas A&M is able to have more success scoring touchdowns in the red zone, I like them to win this game over Notre Dame. With Notre Dame, they are a team that they more so want to just win, just running the football and just doing what the defense allows them to do on offense. They're not going to force the issue. They're not going to press it. But if you get Notre Dame down early, or if you're able to capitalize off your red zone trips, and you start putting Notre Dame in situations where they need more from their passing game than what they will like to ask of their passing game, then you have the ability to beat them. And I like Texas A&M to beat Notre Dame this week. I'm shocked that Notre Dame is such a heavy favorite. Notre Dame is a good team, but they're not a touchdown better than what Texas A&M is. Texas A&M, they got the offensive line. They have a defense that their secondary, with the improvements that Mike Elko made to it, it's going to give C.J. Carr a rough time. And C.J. Carr had a rough time throwing the ball against Miami. The box score doesn't show the struggles that C.J. Carr had against that UM front, that UM secondary. Texas A&M, their defense is kind of built the same way that Miami's is. They got a bunch of athletic bodies on their front seven, and they got a lot of new faces in that secondary. So I like Texas A&M over Notre Dame. 17-14 is going to be my final score prediction. I'm not expecting a lot of offense in this game, but I do believe that Texas A&M prevails late with the dual threat ability of Marcel Reed, and I just don't see Notre Dame's passing attack being good enough to win this game for them. It's only the third game of the season for Florida, and it already feels like things are about to snowball for Billy Napier and this team if they don't win against LSU. You were not supposed to be 1-1. With the difficulty of your schedule, your next three games against Miami on the road, Texas, and then Texas A&M and College Station, make this LSU game must win. Because if you fall to 1-2, then Billy Napier could get fired by the second week of October. That USF game was supposed to be a layup on what's a gauntlet that you have to overcome this year to not just be a potential playoff team, but to even be bowl eligible. Florida at this point, if you can't beat USF, then who can you beat? We don't know what Florida is. We know how talented they are, but talent doesn't win games. Are you well coached? Do you have consistent quarterback play? I'm not trying to hate on DJ Lagway, but let's be honest. He has not looked like the quarterback that he was advertised to be coming into this season. When you tell me dynamic quarterback, I think Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson. Anything other than that, I don't consider dynamic. DJ Lagway looks more like Jameis Winston or Big Ben Roethlisberger than he does a Lenore Sellers or a Cam Newton. Anytime we see a big 230-plus quarterback that can run a little bit, that has a strong arm, we start throwing Cam Newton comparisons on him. I just don't see the juice with DJ Lagway. Now, he hasn't really practiced that much. Didn't really get a lot of reps in fall camp and in the spring due to injuries. He's looked rusty to start this season. Florida doesn't need DJ Lagway to be a superstar to beat LSU. But what they do need out of him is to be great in the big situations, to make a big throw on third down, to be able to avoid a sack for a big 30, 40-yard play in the middle of the second quarter. Can he come up clutch for them late in the fourth, during the final 2 moments, if this is a one-score game? Florida has a talented enough team that they can overcome DJ Lagway maybe not being as good as what he was hyped up to be this offseason. They got great running backs, one of the best offensive lines in America. They got a phenomenal defensive line. If Caleb Banks plays in this game, it's going to be huge for Florida being able to walk out of Death Valley with the upset W. Caleb Banks is the best interior defensive tackle in America. LSU has a new look offensive line with 4 new starters. Although they did look really good against Clemson, how are they going to look against Caleb Banks? A disruptor, somebody that's phenomenal at getting after the quarterback. He can't completely take over this game. Same thing with Tyreek Sapp. Tyreek Sapp and Caleb Banks are the 2 most important players on Florida's defense to stop in LSU's offense. If they don't get outstanding performances from these 2 players, they're not going to stop LSU. They're not going to win this game. If Florida walks away beating LSU, it's going to be mostly due in part to Caleb Banks and Tyreek Sapp not being able to be blocked by LSU's new look offensive line. Florida offensively, as long as the ground game is consistent for them, as long as DJ Lagway can just be good enough, make the necessary throws, and upset is possible. Billy Napier is 4-9 in road games as Florida's head coach. But although his record shows that he's not good on the road, Florida has been competitive in a bunch of road games that they played in under Billy Napier. And last year, after they lost to Texas A&M, a few weeks later, they went on the road to Rocky Top and gave Tennessee a scare. And they were a few plays away from walking out of that game for upset win. If Billy Napier can make the right decisions late in this game, Florida can win this game against LSU. That's the only thing that is hurting Florida this year. It's the coaching. The coaching isn't that consistent. The play calling is really atrocious at times. But you're hoping that the talent of DJ Lagway can overcome the incompetence of Billy Napier. But I don't think that's going to be the case. And I'm going to take LSU to get the win. I don't like Brian Kelly, but Brian Kelly has proven that if you give him a good team, as talented as what LSU is this season, he'll maximize its potential. And I trust Brian Kelly more than I trust Billy Napier. This Florida-LSU game is going to be close. LSU isn't going to beat Florida by 10. It's going to be a one-possession game, but one-possession games are often decided by the better coached team. And in a lot of the games that Florida plays in, they often are not the better coached team. So give me LSU. 27-20 is my final score prediction for this game. I'm taking the Tigers.